It's time to shed light on the white spots in our history, whether it's the fate of an ancient artifact or a behind-the-scenes power struggle. The mystery of a mysterious murder or the cold calculation of the powerful. Nothing will remain unsolved, because after any crime, there are clues. In our case, this is evidence from the past. 1986 year, Mexico City. FIFA World Cup quarterfinal. England and Argentina meet on the field. Diego Maradona plays for Latin Americans. During this match, he scores 2 goals. One of them will be called the goal of the century. The other is the greatest scam in the history of football. In the 51st minute, the striker of the Argentine national team hits the opponent's goal. Attention! By hand. And, most improbably, the goal is counted. Both the referee of the match Ali Benacer and the side referee Bogdan Dachev pretend that nothing happened. Maradona himself states in all interviews, in that episode, if there was a hand, it was only the hand of God. This is the same chief referee of the match Ali Benacer, who did not count violations. In the 2015 year, Diego Maradona visits him and gives a t-shirt with the inscription, "To my eternal friend." It turns out that all these years, the athlete was grateful to the judge for that resounding victory. Is it possible that there was a conspiracy, and in the distant 86th everything happened not by chance? An interesting point. After the victory, the population's support for Argentine President Raúl Alfonsín increased significantly. And this is despite the fact that during his reign, the country had a severe financial crisis, inflation, and Ross government debt. Did a football match really affect a politician's career? And was it an accident? Is it true that sporting victories and failures become a means of influence in a big political game? Sponge, rags, tennis balls. This is what athletes put in their underwear about themselves. Such a scandalous statement was recently made by the coach of the Finnish national team in biathlon, Peter Kukkonen. At the end of November, 2020th year, after the ski jumping World Cup, he decided to expose the deception and told Ilta-Sanomat about it. Athletes do not place these items by chance. In this way, they increase their body volume, which allows them to wear a larger suit before performing. But why? Thanks to the large clothes, the so-called windage increases during jumps, and the skiers fly 10 or even 15 meters further. But it turns out that this is a real sports fraud. But what pushes athletes to dirty play? Who benefits from this? And who pays for the fake results? Let's figure it out. Why do football players have the biggest fee? Tens of thousands of athletes who get paid as office clerks or even less there, barely survive there. They're with bread on water. For which Diego Maradona took revenge on Great Britain when a football match served as a trigger for the outbreak of an armed conflict. Exclusive interview with the former midfielder of the USSR national team. It's called a football war. Something happened at the stadium, the war began. Why is politics trying to influence big-time sports? John F. Kennedy also said that the power of a state is determined by the number of nuclear missiles and the number of Olympic gold medals. A unique examination of evidence from the past, with the help of which athletes improve their results. At the moment, there is a little more than 100 kilograms hanging here. And is it really possible to consider these honest victories? Equipment gives an increase. How the political preferences of judges affect the results of the Olympic Games. The judge is also a person, and the judge is also afraid. A regular swimsuit against imitation shark skin.
Well, as a matter of fact, we see how this technology works.
Nanotechnology in big sports. What are they not made of? And how does it help to win? What can I say? In 1930th year, it was not easy for the players on the field. The inconvenient truth about big wins and world-class games. Right now, sports victories have always brought glory and national love to the answers that turned out to be stronger, higher, and faster than others. But even in ancient times, people did not always play fair. In the 1st century AD, the Roman Emperor Nero won all the starts at the Olympic Games. He has a record number of awards. How did he manage it? Was the emperor really such an outstanding athlete? Of course not. According to historians, he changed the rules of the games with his decrees, rewritten them for himself. For example, once in a chariot race, he reduced the number of horses from 6 to 4. And he himself went out on chariots drawn by 10 horses. It is not surprising that he came to the finish line first. In the entire history of sports competitions, no one has influenced the results of competitions so boldly and openly. Modern athletes do it more subtly and carefully hide the facts of fraud. Fraud is the theft of someone else's property or the acquisition of the right to someone else's property by deception or abuse of trust. Any material goods can become the subject of fraud. Responsibility for such actions is regulated by a general norm, Article 159 of the Criminal Code. It's in our country. But is it possible to attract athletes who cheat under this article? What exactly is considered cheating in sports? And if the division of such crimes into degrees of severity? For an answer to these questions, we turn to the chairman of the Sports Law Commission of the Association of Lawyers of Russia, Professor Sergei Alexeyev. There is a dual nature of responsibility in sports. First of all, it is a sporting responsibility. As a rule, these are annulled results up to a lifetime disqualification of the athlete. And in parallel, there may be administrative criminal liability. Each country has different responsibilities. And Italy, just like France, Germany assumes criminal liability. Athletes can be, say, arrested in some European country and even deported. So, the responsibility for sports cheating is up to criminal in Russia and in most Western countries. The most severe punishment is threatened for doping, both pharmaceutical and technological. But why doesn't this stop some athletes? Do they really hope that no one will notice the deception? But the secret sooner or later still becomes clear. As it happened, shooting Van Dendrich, a Belgian cyclist. In the 2016 year, before the Youth World Championship in Vlagros, she was removed from the race.
I think my career is over.
During a thermal imaging test, a motor was found in her bike. The engine was hidden inside the frame, and it was turned on by pressing a button on the steering wheel. This is called technological doping in sports. The athlete immediately declared that the bike was not hers.
A friend of mine left his bike next to the truck, which looked exactly like my bike. The mechanics prepared it for the race because they thought it was my bike. I hope people will understand that I'm telling the truth.
But no one believed the girl. She had to leave the sport. At the same time, the decision to disqualify the deprivation of awards is certainly not made on emotions. Even if an athlete is caught red-handed in the act, a thorough investigation and examination is carried out. There is a whole pyramid of jurisdictional bodies that consider disputes on this topic. It starts with the judging committee. Then, there are appeal commissions when organizing sports competitions. Further, it may already be the disciplinary committee of an international or relevant sports organization. And the decision of these jurisdictional bodies may already be appealed. The highest court in the field of sports to Lausanne, to the International Court of Arbitration for Sport, which already makes a decision in the final version. But the stricter the controls, the more frequent the checks, the more sophisticated the dishonest athletes circumvent the law. Is this risk justified? And what is it for? Is it just about winning or something else? We will return to this issue later. In the meantime, let's figure out how athletes set new records and what they use to improve the result. Today, this is the equipment. It's a common thing for heavyweight athletes. This is how the powerlifters dress when they go to the barbell. For the first time, athletes appeared in such attire in 1988 year at competitions in Leningrad. Then Canadian and American powerlifters made a splash and broke their own records. In the same year, in fact, for the last time in history, an athlete in the most ordinary woolen tights won. It was Russian Vladimir Mironov. After that, all the powerlifters changed into new equipment. And for a reason. After all, these things have been proven to affect the result. Thanks to proper attire, athletes are able to lift more weight and not damage the joints. But how much can all this improve the result? We decided to find out whether professional equipment really affects the final performance. The champion of Europe, the master of sports of the international category of the bench press, Evgeny Vasiliev, will help us. For several years he trained and performed exclusively in bench press t-shirts, but not so long ago. He switched to more modern and technological clothing. Soft equipment is our device of this kind of plan, consists of artificial threads and rubber. This piece of clothing for weightlifters is called a slingshot. But how does it work, and what advantages do they give? At the moment, there is a little more than 100 kilograms hanging here. We will try to shake this weight as many times as possible. Now the bench presses are in slingshot. And Evgeny boldly adds another 50 kilograms to the barbell. Let's try to shake 150 kilograms in one loop of the slingshot, 2, the maximum number of times. In this way, 150 kilograms is 10 times easy enough. So, without much effort, with the help of only one detail of the sports wardrobe, the athlete lifted the barbell 1.5 times heavier. And this is not the limit. It was in the sling that Vasiliev set his personal record. A 3-layer slingshot gives an increase, it turns out, in the weight category, up to 82.5 kilograms in 3 layers. I shoot 340 kilograms. But the latest sports technology is extremely expensive. Even the richest athletes don't have the money to support scientific institutes and pay for laboratory testing. Who sponsors the records? And most importantly, what does he get in return? First of all, the states themselves are engaged in financing the industry. Since the middle of the 20th century, politics has been clearly visible in big sports. Victories in the Olympic arenas have become part of the image of each country. And if the states are rivals, then in the war for gold medals, as they say, all means are good. It is enough to recall the famous hockey battles of the USSR-Canada. Every hockey fan felt that these were not just matches. It was a confrontation of systems. Although everyone says, no, sports are not politicians. It's a kind of war anyway. War by ideology. And it was not by chance that once, on Stalin's orders, a team was disbanded, which lost to the Central Committee. At the Olympics of the 52nd year, because it represented our army, we can say there. Well, most of the players were from the Central Committee. And they simply did not become a team for some time, they were all transferred to Kalinin then, now Tver. Because they had to show that their way of life, the communist way of life, is much better than others. This is a recording of evidence from the past. A video document that opens your eyes to how politics could affect the results of important sports competitions. Canada Cup 1987. The USSR national team is playing brilliantly. With a score of 4-0 wins against Czechoslovakia, with a score of 5-1 against the USA. The Soviet athletes played by the rules and not aggressively, while the Americans used intimidation tactics. They constantly attacked the players of our country, using force techniques. Striker Andrei Lomakin was hit in the face by Gary Suter so hard that the Soviet hockey player had to apply 10 stitches. At the same time, the judges did not notice any violations. The situation was repeated in the final matches of the USSR and Canada. The Soviet Union lost with a minimum margin of 1 goal. It was unthinkable for Canada, the USA and the West to give victory to a communist country. John F. Kennedy also said that the power of a state is determined by the number of nuclear missiles and the number of Olympic gold medals. Therefore, of course, in connection with the interference of politicians in sports, when politics interfering in sports, even lawyers become powerless. And such an unfair approach during important matches is not an exception, but rather the rules. Here's another piece of evidence from the recent past. It was such a flag at the qualifying match for the European Championship 2016 was launched over the stadium in Belgrade. The teams of Serbia and Albania played. And it was their first match after the declaration of independence by the province of Kosovo in 2008 year. The game ended in a scandal. Who is to blame? Fans, players, or maybe politics? Albanian fans, including, according to some reports, the brother of Albanian Prime Minister Olsi Rama, launched a drone with a flag in honor of their country. Serbian defender Mitrovic jumped up and tore off the canvas. The provocation worked. A mass brawl ensued. As a result, the match was disrupted, and the Albanians got a technical victory. A little later, it became known that the brother of the Prime Minister was found to have a remote-controlled drone. But no one reviewed the results of the match. Evgeny Lovchev is a legend of football of the USSR, the best football player of 1972. I'm sure both countries are lucky that it all ended like this. After all, the match could become, without exaggeration, the reason for the start of another war. In the 70s, I played at the World Cup in Mexico City. We arrived in El Salvador, and look, the plane lands, and everything is cordoned off there. Runway and airports. And what is it? And then they tell us that because of football, they had a war quite recently between, in my opinion, Honduras and El Salvador. This is called a football war because something happened at the stadium, where there are spectators and so on, and the war began. Do you understand? And politicians should also understand this. This should be understood by the athletes themselves. After the legendary Argentina-England match in the quarterfinals at the World Cup in Mexico in the 86th year, the fans of both countries were also indignant. Diego Maradona scored his famous goal, called the Hand of God. Then the British hoped that the referees would not count the kick, but neither the main referee of the match Albin Nasser, nor the side referee Bogdan Dachev reacted to the prohibited technique playing with his hand. After a while, both were suspended from judging for this mistake. But is it true that they didn't notice or the referee just pretended? This is evidence from the past, memoirs of the Bulgarian judge Bogdan Dachev. In them, he admits that he saw violations, but had no right to stop the match because only the Tunisian chief referee Ben Nasser had such powers by rank. At that time, FIFA did not allow assistants to discuss the decision of the chief arbitrators. And if FIFA had appointed a European referee for such an important match, Maradona's go would have been cancelled. Moreover, Alibi Nasser also saw Maradona's hand, but did not interfere, and decades after the scandalous match, he said, "Be proud of being involved in this victory. As a person and as a judge, I am proud to have played a role in this historic moment." It turns out that, by passing all the rules, Ben Nasser frankly helped Argentina. But why? Who intimidates referees before important matches? The judge is also a person, and the judge is also afraid. One victory, and you don't have to worry about money. Why do athletes cheat for medals? I have seen a figure of about $150 to $200 billion. Technological doping. Why athletes without sponsors have no chance of winning. And how do modern technologies affect the result? Unique expertise, evidence from the past.
So, as a matter of fact, we see how this technology works.
And also why Maradona's fraudulent goal, called the Hand of God, would be impossible today. Watch it right now. So, 1986 year. Maradona hits with his hand, and thanks to this goal, Argentina win. The referees do not notice anything, or pretend that they do not notice. But why? After all, even when watching the video, it is obvious that the football player used a prohibited technique. It's worth going back 4 years and tracing exactly how relations between Argentina and the UC developed. In 1982, another conflict occurred between the two states over territorial rights to the Falkland Islands. The conflict escalated into a military clash. In it, Argentina lost 649 people and control of the archipelago. The state and its residents have a grudge. Shortly before the match with England, President Raul Alfonso initiated a tribunal for military officials who led the Argentine army. The commander-in-chief of the country's armed forces, dictator Leopold Galtieri, who, in fact, started the Falklands War. Vice Admiral Jorge Isaac Anaya and former Air Force Commander Basilio Lamy Doso were found guilty of defeating the country and received sentences of 8 to 14 years. The verdicts were announced a month before the start of the match. This fact, plus the triumph on the football field, and the rating of President Alfonso skyrocketed. The citizens of the country rejoiced. They felt that they had taken revenge on Great Britain. The fact that there was a policy around this match, that we all knew that some kind of war had started there because of the Falkland Islands, and that it was heated up in countries, even more so in Argentina, it was actually heated up. It was hovering around this match that the Falkland Islands were almost being played out. Interestingly, both during the Battle of the Falkland Islands and during the football match, England sympathized with Europe, and Argentina with all of Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East. Maybe that's why the referee from Africa, Ali Ben Nasser, decided to let Argentina win. Or is it even simpler? The judge is also a person, and the judge is also afraid. Could he have shown that the goal was scored incorrectly? Could. The decision had to be made momentary. Bang, and that's it. To be honest, I was afraid, because how Maradona himself will react even more, and then he will run up to you and you again. Here. More than 30 years after the match with Britain, Maradona's former teammates admitted he practiced the game with his hand during training. In other words, was he initially determined to win at any cost? Or maybe it was an accident, which the footballer regretted, but did not want to admit. By the way, 4 years later, Maradona used his trademark kick again during the match with the USSR. But what was the reason for the dishonest game by the Soviet country? Maybe money. The prize fund of the football World Cups has always been impressive. In 1990, it was several $million. Today, the numbers are even higher. For example, in the 2018 year, it was $358 million, and in the 2018 year, it was 400 million. This is almost 30 billion rubles. The money is distributed among all participating teams of the World Cup, but the winners receive the most. This is how the distribution table of funds looks like. The first-place team receives 4 times more than those who passed the group stage. But athletes' fees and prize money are nothing compared to the kind of capital that revolves around sports. I have seen a figure of about $150 to $100 billion a year in the turnover of the sports business as a whole. Of course, this is a white business. No one knows how much money is spinning in underground sweepstakes. The owners of sweepstakes earn even more from the popular love of sports. There are dozens of legal bookmakers operating in Russia. You can also place a bet online. To do this, you need to register on the website, create a virtual wallet, choose the sport of interest, and a specific competition. You can bet both on the outcome of the game and on the player. The largest such gain in Russia was recorded in the year 2012. Then the Muscovite bet 50 rubles and won, attention, 141 million. The amount is amazing, but this is a drop in the bucket compared to how much the bookmakers themselves earn. In Russia alone, the annual profit of deliveries in legal offices is 130 billion rubles. And this, for a moment, is a 2-year budget, well, for example, of the Kirov region. And the annual global turnover, according to approximate estimates, is more than $150 billion. This is the budget for the whole year for countries like Argentina or Denmark. Sports leagues that hold competitions under their auspices also receive fabulous money. They are paid by TV channels for broadcast rights, for the right of each of us to watch this or that match on TV. It is clear that there is the most expensive thing for football. Here, if we are talking about broadcasts not of an international level, but in our championships. As far as I remember, a 4-year contract is now in the Premier League football. In my opinion, they receive about 1.5 billion rubles a year from Match TV, well, more precisely, from the owners of Match TV. Perhaps all these beneficiaries are paying for more and more new records, and are looking for new ways that can help an athlete improve the result. But the possibilities of the human body are not unlimited. Scientists have calculated that after the 2060th year, world records will become impossible. Then who will need sports if a swimmer does not swim faster, a jumper does not jump further and higher, and a weightlifter cannot lift more weight? Therefore, not only states, but also corporations that earn money from sports, have been looking for opportunities to help an athlete improve the result and make the pursuit of a gold medal endless for a long time. How exactly does this happen? Large companies build laboratories, finance the most daring experiments. Some of this is beginning to be applied everywhere, but something remains in the past. So, in the second half of the 20th century, several companies at once engaged in the invention and introduction of new materials into the sports industry. Here is a miracle evidence. At first glance, an ordinary tracksuit. And here is this photo of swimmers participating in the Olympic Games 2008 year in Beijing. Please note that most of the athletes are wearing these swimsuits. Then these guys made a real splash. Attention, 23 world records have been broken. Something unprecedented in the history of sports. And now a curious fact. 33 of the 36 gold medals were won by athletes dressed in these suits. But here's what's interesting. In the following year, in the 29th year at the World Aquatics Championships, world records were reset 43 times. After that, the judges and sports experts recognized the swimsuits as technical doping and banned their use. However, the athletes were not taken away with a medal, they left everything as it is. The scandalous suit was made of a special high-tech water-repellent fabric, which consists of intertwined threads of elastin, nylon, and polyurethane. But how can a suit made of such fabric affect the result? Is it possible that he had nothing to do with it, and the accusations of technological doping were unjustified? We decided to conduct our own examination and asked for help from the master of sports of international class. In speed swimming coach Alexandra Volkova. Alexandra chose 2 swimmers from her group of students who consistently show the same high result. These are Maxim Gerasimev and Arseny Sluch. Let's start with testing to make sure that the level of the guys is the same.
Right now we have sailed without swimsuits. It is obvious that you are in the same shape. Both are perfectly ready. Let's try to see what happens when one of you is lucky enough to swim in such a suit.
As a result of the draw, Arseny got the forbidden costume. The result is impressive. Arseny was ahead of Maxim by more than a body.
So, as a matter of fact, we see how this technology works. At short distances, touching the hull with an advantage is a colossal chasm.
The swimming suit, which has been called fast skin all over the world, was put on by Arseny today for the first time. I will say that the way in it is much easier than, let's say, in hydro shorts or in a folder. My body was lying higher on the water. I felt the water more, I slid on it. I know that we are friends with you and swim about on the same level. I could feel him floating away from me, and there was nothing I could do about it. It turns out that swimming suits were banned for a reason. They really gave a great advantage.
Due to the maximum hydrodynamics, due to the ultra-technological fabric, due to the absolute seamless and ultrasonic gluing of this entire fabric, the maximum number of vortices in the water is removed, resistance decreases, and slipperiness increases.
And here's another financial success story. In 1999 year, Polish athletes were able to win 11 medals at the World Rowing Championships. And not at all because they were better prepared than others. It's just that the team performed on new boats. The innovative shape of the Plastex product made it possible to increase the speed of passing the distance. Innovations were not banned, and an unknown company literally turned into a world leader in the production of kayaks and canoes in a year. High technology is changing sports so much that now it is not the strongest at all who is at the top, but the one with the best sports accessories or equipment. Here's another clue. 2 soccer balls. 1 leather sample of 1930th year, the second high-tech, will be made in 2020. According to experts, it is much easier to score a goal with this sword because it is much more maneuverable. But words are words. Let's conduct an experiment and see with our own eyes how one sword differs from another, and how they will lead you into the field directly in the game. The ball of the sample of 1930th year is made of a rubber chamber and an outer shell leather. The ball 2020 consists of several polyurethane plates thermally glued together. Such a sports equipment does not absorb moisture, does not deform, springs perfectly, and flies along a clearly defined trajectory. At least, this is what the manufacturers assure the players. But how is it really? Let's take a look and have a test drive. For the help of the examination, we turn to the authors of the live football channel, football players Anton Emelin and Sviatoslav Chernenko. They sent us this 80-year-old ball, and we have exactly 1 day to test it and compare it with the most modern professional sword. To give an accurate long-range transmission with a modern sword is not a problem. Flag. It's much more interesting if I can do the same with this rare sword. And the first miss. The football player did not calculate the force of the blow. The leather ball is much heavier than its modern counterpart. We will hold a penalty shootout. Well, 3 years ago, they probably didn't know that they were going to Cuba. It's time to fly very strangely. What can I say? In 1930th year, it was not easy for the players on the field. The ball is constantly losing inertia, and in general they lack elasticity. Therefore, in order to deliver a good solid blow, you have to put a lot more effort. It turns out that modern high-tech swords are a real gift for athletes. They are not just easier, it is easier for them to set the desired flight path or pass an accurate pass. Moreover, a few years ago, football leagues tried to introduce balls that changed the flight path. Some time ago, swords were invented that they did not fly. Here you hit, he's flying like that. He was changing direction somehow. Goalkeepers were sometimes clowns because of this. All you had to do there was slap the ball hard. It's like old hottopics. In the 9th. But the production of high-tech balls is not cheap, and football leagues acquire them piece by piece. But manufacturers have found a way out. Branded balls are now made for each big tournament, which are then sold to fans for a lot of money. And it turns out that football players' records and beautiful goals are paid for by fans out of their own pocket. And if the ball is not just a souvenir, but the one that was on the field during the match, say, at the European or World Championships, its price soars to cosmic heights. Today, you can find any sports item on the market with an autograph of any athlete. A t-shirt with Messi's painting costs 250,000 rubles, with Ronaldo's signature for 100,000. The Grove of Pirati go Maradona will cost $500,000. That is, people buy them not to play them, but just to come to the stadium or just to go out there at the dacha, chop wood there. There you go. Well, that's kind of cool for them, because it connects him with his favorite club. And this is evidence not from the past or even from the present, but from the future. An incredible technological novelty is the Helisport headphones. They affect the motor neurons of the human brain with electrical impulses and activate them, as well as strengthen neuromuscular connections, that is, they force all the functions of the athlete's system to work at the limit of their physical capabilities. According to experts, such a device will allow its owners to give their best, not even 100%, but 150%. Unless, of course, it is prohibited in the near future. Swimming suits that mimic the skin of an eye, cork elements in baseball bats, and a huge amount of substances to increase endurance have already been banned. That's just the bans do not stop, but spur technology developers. And new high-tech devices are being born that help athletes win. In big sports, of course, there are two sides to every victory. Usually the audience sees only the front side of the competition. A tense start, a spectacular finish, a new record. And so the one who is faster, taller, stronger, gets a reward. But there is another side to this. The winner turns out to be the winner for a reason. Most often, this means that someone has invested a lot of money in his victory. Entire scientific institutes work for athletes. The Olympics, the World Championships are captured by the race of high technologies. Even the smallest detail affects the outcome of the competition. Well, for example, sneakers are 50 grams lighter, and now the chances of winning increase significantly. This means that initially athletes do not compete on equal terms. But do we need a sport where money and high technology decide everything? You had the evidence program from the past with you.